Welcome to IAS Talent Team webinar on SAP's Cloud Identity Services. So just a short introduction to both of us. My name is Sullivan Sabir. I'm a learning and workzone consultant, as Venetia mentioned, and I've been involved on several different IAS implementations alongside Pankaj. So I'll allow Pankaj to introduce himself. Yeah, so Pankaj is a lead HXM consultant here, and he's led with multiple IAS implementations as well. I think, Pankaj, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Primarily I'm here to help with this session on IAS. So I've been personally involved with IAS from 2-3 years now, since its inception within SuccessFactors. So I'll be happy to ask or answer any questions if you have any. Thank you, Stephen.
Perfect. All right, so we just covered the agenda for today. So we'll be covering the fundamentals of identity management in the modern world, which is primarily to deal with single sign-on, single logout, and SAML technology. Now, after we've laid that foundation, we're going to delve into SAP Cloud Identity Services and the advantages and capabilities of the two products, IAS and IPS. And then after that, we'll be going through the different scenarios in which you can deploy this and the different sort of business applications you have across the SuccessFactors suite. And then we'll be diving into a system demo to show you what the admin console looks like as well. So we'll begin. So like I said, before we delve into the technicalities of SAP, IAS and IPS, it'll be useful to just lay out the fundamentals of identity management and the technology and terminology regarding that. So start with single sign-on. Single sign-on essentially is a functionality that allows users to access multiple applications with one initial sign-in and using one set of login credentials. So once the user logs into one application, the rest of the applications that are configured with that, they are then logged into that. This is not necessarily a piece of software in itself, but rather an outcome of it. And I'm sure you have this deployed within your company's personal identity management infrastructure. It's a very important piece of technology today as companies use more and more different systems throughout their network, and having a single sign-on will improve the user experience. And that brings me on to Single Logout, which is sort of the sister functionality of Single Sign-On, which is essentially the opposite, but same technicality. Single Logout allows a user's session to be terminated across multiple applications upon one logout request. And again, similar to Single Sign-On, this is useful for organizations as they use multiple different systems. And this improves user experience by enhancing security, because if users aren't logging out of systems, a lot of information can be leaked as well. So having one site logout equal to a logouts across the systems, and that's quite useful for companies. And with SSO and SLO, they work together in tangent thanks to SAML technology. If you don't know what SAML technology is, this refers to Security Assertion Markup Language. This is a sort of an internationally accepted protocol that is used worldwide, and this allows systems to communicate with each other by identifying with each other as trusted parties, and then they exchange authorization information and authentication requests. And yeah, SAML's been great for organizations as it leads to better security, easy identity management across the board, and lower service costs as everything is more centralized. So now that we covered the fundamentals, I think we'll delve into SAP now. Yeah, so SAP Cloud, now that we covered the fundamentals, I'll cover SAP Cloud Identity Services. So Cloud Identity Services is mainly consisting of two different products, IAS and IPS, which is Identity Authentication Services and Identity Provisioning Services. So Identity Provisioning Service is a system that allows you to provision users from one system to another. And this is essentially just used for loading users into a system, which is then used to point towards a target system. This allows you to sort of maintain user groups and roles whilst transferring the data. So if you're transferring it from SuccessFactors and sort of pointing it towards Analytics Cloud, you can, whilst transferring that data, you can add transformations to the data, add different user groups, and those groups will have different authorizations within the app. And you can also create user groups as well. And this essentially automates the identity provisioning lifecycle, as it allows you to automate your provisioning and deprovisioning of users. And this is very flexible across the board because it can be used on-premise and different cloud applications. And it's compatible with multiple different pieces of software. Now, IPS is sort of the prerequisite to IAS, which is the second part. Identity Authentication Service is essentially where authentication is managed. So this facilitates authentication and single sign-on for users and provides you with cloud-based access, control-based access to the business processes, all your applications that are configured, the data, your monitoring, your reporting, provisioning logs, error logs. You can configure two-factor authentication, risk-based authentication, conditional, however you wish. And you can also use IAS as its own identity provider, or you can connect it with your existing identity provider and have that be used as a proxy. So IAS can point towards, say, Azure AD, Office 365, so on and so forth. And again, this is great for companies as it allows for secure access to applications, lowers your service costs because it centralizes everything, and you don't have to maintain multiple systems. And with different authentication options and security, there's a much more security within your system. So with Identity Provisioning Service, I thought it'd be useful to just map out what it looks like here. So you would have a user source system, which is where the users are being taken from. That's usually, in most cases, with our implementation SuccessFactors. Then in the middle, you can see in the blue box there, Identity Provisioning Services. It reads those users from the source system. And if you want to apply any transformations to the data, say change the first name, last name field into a full name field, and then any different transformations you want to have, and then create different user groups as well, maybe admins and users, and then push that towards the target system. So that could be anything like report stories or any other application, like maybe learning as well. So that's the process flow there. And here we have Identity Authentication Services process flow. So this shows you where the user's authentication request is being sent. So say the user wants to log into SuccessFactors. Here we can see that they can either be single sign-on to their identity provider, which that could be Azure or any other sort of Active Directory, and that could be a seamless single sign-on. Or we can go through the top for the authentication flow here, and we can see that user could have any different authentication method, be that username, password, two-factor authentication, or any so on and so forth. That can connect to an on-premise application or an on-premise Active Directory with a cloud connector, and then that allows you to get into your cloud-based application. So now that we've covered the basics of IAS and IPS and what it does, I'm sure you're asking now, what can it be used? How can IAS be used in different business applications? So here we have a sort of slide here that sort of explains the different applications that you can have with IAS. I'll be running through each of them. So first of all, and this is the most one of the most common use cases, is that IAS can act as a proxy for your identity provider or your Active Directory. So this can connect to, say, Office 365 or Azure AD, and this will allow you to maintain your current identity infrastructure. And this works by just simply taking the authentication request from the application in question and just sending it to your existing identity provider. And a lot of organizations find this beneficial as it lessens your maintenance and lowers your cost on maintaining multiple user databases. And it's great as well because it's compatible with almost any identity provider in the world. The second use case here is that IAS can in itself act as an identity provider. So instead of sending a request to a proxy, it can just deal with that authentication request itself and have your full users loaded within there and all your authentication configurations loaded within there. So then the user request is dealt within IAS. The admin can create user groups, say admins, admin type 1, super users, and end users. And again, very beneficial for organizations as it centralizes it further. So there's no more proxy being used or any third-party identity provider. Everything is dealt within one system, and it lowers the cost, increases the security infrastructure. Thirdly, we can see here, IAS can facilitate the logon of external users to the LMS. So for those of you that have the learning module, you may find it useful that IAS can help with allowing, say, if you have pre-joiners or contractors and you wish to have an external learning site for them, you can configure IAS in a way that those particular external users will not have to be added to your internal database. They can have their own dedicated external site and external login. So you can configure that with password or two-factor authentication. And then, if we can see here as well, we have IAS can facilitate SSO to an internal career website. So with recruiting, IAS can help users, instead of logging into an internal career website, if they just click on the link, it'll take their existing SuccessFactors login and just take them towards the internal career website. And that could lead to increased engagement and applications within your organization. Furthermore, IAS can grant login for pre-joiners during the onboarding process. So you can send an initial account creation email to your pre-joiners and onboardees, so that before they actually join the organization, they can start the onboarding experience and have a swift SSO experience. Furthermore, with WorkZone, IAS can contribute to a much greater WorkZone experience. So for those of you that have WorkZone, you'll know that if you're creating an intranet, the entire point of the application is to defragment the employee experience and centralize all your applications. And if you're not utilizing SSO, then that functionality is sort of undermined. So you can use IAS to configure single sign-on for your different applications that you configured within WorkZone. And you can also control authorization and logins. So only some people will have access to some pages and so on and so forth. And lastly, report stories. IAS is a prerequisite for report stories. And given the amount that report stories has been pushed nowadays, and SAP is recommending it, it'll be a no-brainer to activate IAS so that you are ready to utilize report stories. So in terms of these business applications, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So that brings me to the next part, in which I will show you what IAS looks like, the admin console, and I'll give you a sort of demonstration of the system itself. So can everyone confirm that they can see this, the IAS admin console? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So if you can see here we have the admin console for IAS, Identity Authentication Service, and this has Identity Provisioning Service integrated within it. So it's all in one place. You don't have to worry about two systems, because at the end of the day, it's all integrated once it's been migrated. So here you can see all your different pages. So it starts with users and authorizations, in which your users are stored, and you can view a user database and all users that have been loaded from the source systems. Here we have identity provisioning, so you can see the source systems that you're pulling data from, the target system in which the data is being pushed to, any proxies that you may have, and provisioning logs, so you can see any failures in the jobs that are being done. In the applications and resources section, here you can see all the different applications that have been configured, their authentication methods. You can configure password policies and email templates, which I'll show you in a second. Identity provider. This is for the aforementioned using a third-party proxy that I mentioned before. So if you wish to have Azure AD or Office 365 as a corporate identity provider, you would configure it in this section. And then finally, we have the monitoring and reporting section. This allows you to view log-on requests at a high level within a certain time frame, and you can also view changes and or troubleshooting logs as well. So I'll begin this demonstration with the user management section. So if I'll click in this drop-down menu, I'll start with user management. So fundamentally, as an identity service, IAS can hold your entire user database. And if you can see here, these are the users that have been loaded into this particular system. And this can be any number. We've seen numbers up to tens of thousands and 50,000, so on and so forth. There's not really a limit to how much you can load in. So here, if I click on a user here, we can see the user profile. We can see their ID and their email. And we have all these different tabs here. Again, you can see the applications that they've been configured in, any legal information, their authentication requests, or have they been blocked, have they not reset their password, any groups they're a part of, which I'll explain groups in a second. So within user details, you can see that I'll click the edit section so you can see here. Apart from the mandatory sections like user ID and employee number, it's up to you how much data you wish to store within IAS. You can store employee information, any company information, their address, their logon name, times when they're in. Here we have employee information. So if you're utilizing the commerce feature in SuccessFactors, you can have the cost center there, the department that they're in, the division, their manager, and again, their company as well. So you can have the region that they're in. If you're a multinational organization, you can specify this person's in an international office, say in the US, this person's in the UK office. And most importantly, this bottom section here is the custom attribute section within the user. This allows you to store application-specific information. So, for example, if I was implementing report stories, this custom attribute field number 1, this will be used to store a key that is used between SuccessFactors, IAS, and report stories, and allows for login. And this can be used for, say, work zone and any other application. And you can see here we have 10 custom attribute fields, which means that you have up to 10 applications that you can store for this user. Does anyone have any questions related to custom attributes? No? Okay. So that covers the user management. So I'll delve into groups now. So click in there. So user groups can be created for any application, work zone, report stories, SuccessFactors, anything. And essentially these allow you to create groups of users which grant permissions on the fly. So say, for example, within this works, I've created 2 groups here, work zone admin and work zone end user. So if I click this one here, this allows me to, if I add users to the system, so if I can say this group, sorry, if I click add and then I click any user here, like this one, I click add. This will allow that user to become an admin on the fly within the respective application that this has been targeted towards. So this limits your maintenance of permissions and role permissions. So again, and this is great for users as it lowers maintenance and lowers the amount of work that has to be done. So I can add someone to an admin, they'll become an admin within work zone, and I can add them as an end user within the end user group, and then they'll automatically be end users. They will not have to be configured any permissions. And this can be done for any application. And finally, administrators. This section is pretty straightforward. This allows you to create admins for the IAS admin console. So what we're looking at now is the administration console. I can allow other users to access this. So if I click add a user, and then I just simply put in their first name, last name, and email, and they'll receive an email invitation to the admin console. And if you click into all these existing admins here, you can see this configure authorizations tab. And this allows you to grant them different administrative permissions. So manage applications, can they manage corporate identity providers, users, groups, tenants, so on and so forth. And that's the main sections of user authorizations. You've got your users that are loaded in, the groups that can they be added to, and the permissions that they can be granted on the fly, and the administrators that can be configured. So does anyone have any questions regarding user management before I continue on to identity provisioning? No, okay. So that brings me on to the second section, identity provisioning. This is a big part of the system. So this is where users are provisioned from a source system and then pushed into a target system. And due to that, there's two main sections, which is the source system and the target system. So I'll click into here. This is the source system. So like I said, this is the system from where data is being read. So say, for example, here we have SuccessFactors as a source. So here we have, there's 5 pages here with the details, transformations, properties, certificate, and jobs page. I'll go through each of them respectively. So over here is the main details page, which is on a high level. You can add the system name and the description for the system. We've said that this is SuccessFactors, and we've added the tenant ID, which is Team T1 for our instance. Moving on to the transformations page, this is quite an important one. This is where you configure a field from the source system to be mapped to a field within the target system. So I can show you what that looks like. This is sort of a simplified view of what that looks like. So you can see here, user ID goes into this ID variable, but that's a bit hard to read. I'll show you within the transformation code. So this is the JSON editor. So you can see within this code, say for example, this piece of code right here, it says source path, user account, navigation, username, then becomes username within the system. So it's got it's not got a capital there, but it's got a capital here. So again, this takes the username field from the source SuccessFactors, and then turns it into the username, maps it to the username field in the target system, and that's consistent without the system throughout the transformation code. So you can see here, user type becomes employee, first name becomes given name, last name then becomes family name. And throughout the IAS implementation process, this is configured with your partner or whoever's doing this with you. And it's a delicate process, but it's very simple. And this is sort of fundamental benefit of identity provisioning services, as it allows you to transform your data. Moving on, you can go to the properties page. This is a bit of a technical page. This is just where you configure various connection settings, which I won't get into granular detail, but you can see here, you can just put a name and a value, but that's mostly done by your identity management expert. Here we have the certificate page. This is where you can download your outbound certificate if you are using certificate-based authentication with another application. And then finally, we have the jobs page. So there's 2 main jobs here, which is the read and the resync job. So what these essentially do is that on a configured scheduled basis, which is usually a daily basis, these will check for any changes in the user data within the source system. So within SuccessFactors, it will look for changes within the source system and then apply it to the target system, which is IAS in this particular example. So say, for example, within SuccessFactors, I delete a user, I change their last name, or I delete them, or I add a new user. These read and resync jobs will make sure to capture that and then push it within here. So if I delete a user, they will no longer be available within the my user database here because the read job has been performed. So yeah, user deletions, user additions, and information changes, that's usually the typical use cases for read and resync jobs. Moving on to target systems, which is similar. This is where data is being pushed to. So by default, you will have identity authentication as one of your target systems. And then from there on out, you can add more and more. Here we have SAP Analytics Cloud, which is report stories. And there are similar pages. So you can see here we have the details page, the transformation page, the properties, and the certificate. So this transformation page, instead of transforming data, this is used for setup. So any changes that you wish to have, say, for example, you run a test system, you're implementing an IAS and test, you can make this, within this JSON editor here, you can transform the data and make each user have a dummy email. You can set password methods or password resets, or you can set SSO within this transformation editor. So that's for initial setup of your target system. Again, the properties page, which is similar to the last one, just high-level configurations of names and values, and if you want to download a certificate as well. So that covers the basics of what a source system and a target system looks like within the IAS admin console. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Maybe transformations or the jobs? Okay. So now I've covered the first two sections, which is your user database and your source system and target systems. I'll move on to the applications page. So this is where you can look at your connected applications, like SuccessFactors. So if I can click into here, I can see all the applications that I have connected with this IAS system here. So if I just click edit here, I can it'll go to SuccessFactors here and say click edit. So here we can see the initial edit options that I can have. I can put the name and the URL for the system, and if it has a parent application, I can configure that. And most importantly, I can pick the authentication method and protocol type of authentication. So this can either be SAML or OpenID. So we're sticking with SAML for now. So if you can see in these different pages, we have single sign-on here, which is for single sign-on options. So you can see you can have your metadata files, the endpoint for users as well. So here we have the URL for the test system there, and the endpoint for the URLs, any certificates that can be downloaded, and sign-on options, and the encryption certificates. Close that. You can configure the names identifiers, the default IDs, and any different attributes that they may have. You can configure any different APIs that you wish to have, and any conditional authentication methods that you can configure within the system as well. So within authentication and access, here you can see any different authentication for single sign-on, social sign-on, which I'll delve into later on, which allows you to use your maybe Google, Twitter, or Apple ID to log on. Any different maybe biometric authentications like Face ID, and email verifications, risk-based authentication, password policies, and branding as well. This branding section allows you to pick the branding of your login screen and also your email templates, which I'll delve into in a second. So next I'll delve into tenant settings. This is various settings for who receives notifications, any security alerts, blocking and deletion for users, and any different SAML config. So if we can see here, you can configure any who's going to get system notifications and alerts to say if there's an error within the system or a provisioning block has failed. If you wish for that to send that towards these different emails, you can add that. So if a new administrator has been added, if there's any expiring certificates, so on and so forth. Any blocking and deletion. So you can enable deletion of these different types of users. So public user, customer user, partner, employee. You can forget the days after that which will happen. So you can say you can block them after a day or 2 days whatsoever. So say if you want to have limited access for a partner. And then different authentication methods here as well, like you saw within the application. You have privacy documents, which I won't delve into now, but here we can have email templates. So this will allow you to have different email templates for different user scenarios. So if you can see here, we can have self-registration, on behalf registration. So I can, if I had a user and their email's been added, I can pick what email they'll get, if they're invited, if they've forgotten their password, if they've reset their password or they've locked their password. And you can see here with this icon here, you can display the preview of that email here. So you can see the tokens, the user, first name, last name, you have registered with IAS, and that can be customized as you wish. And finally, within applications, I'll cover password policies. So if you do use password authentication, this is where you can set the password strength. So you can have your standard or strong. So if I can click the create button here we can see I can create a password policy. So I can say I want to create a strong password policy. I want this to be extremely strong. Set a minimum characters, maximum characters. How long that password actually lasts? Is that just 1 day, or does it last forever. After an activity, does this reset? How many times this will reset? How many failed sign-in attempts we need for this to reset? How long this will be locked for? And whether they can be reset or changed. So that covers on a high level any application settings, all the application settings, and I'll be delving into identity providers in a second. But just quickly, does anyone have any questions before I delve into identity providers? No? Okay. So with identity providers, there's three sections here: corporate, social, corporate and social identity providers. So if I click into corporate identity providers here, I'll explain that. So like I said before, with the business application slide, this is what allows you to configure this. This is where you can configure IAS as a proxy for your existing identity provider, so that authentication can be just given to that proxy and be delegated. So in this particular instance, we have Azure, and it's very similar to the application slide in which you configure the entity type, the SAML configuration, and the IDs, the name ID policies. That's the trust settings and the single sign-on settings as well. So there you can, and from here you can add any corporate identity provider that you have. Office 365 and Azure are the two most common ones that companies use. Furthermore, if you wish to have social identity providers, so this allows you to grant users the ability to log into apps with their social media credentials. And you can link your Google ID, your Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Apple ID. Not many organizations use this, but it's a good thing to have if you want to sort of improve your user experience, especially if you do use these applications on a business within your business. So that can be configured there. Finally, I'll move on to the monitoring and reporting section, which is quite useful. So on the top, we have reporting, we have audit logs and troubleshooting logs, and I'll run through each of them here. So here we can, this allows you to view statistics regarding the number of login requests within a particular time frame and which applications they're coming from. So here we can see a bar graph of the amount of logins that we've had through all my applications. So I can see within the month of 2020, February, there's been 52 logons, and then within March, there's been 59 logons. And I can change the counters here, and I can change the period up here. Secondly, we have the audit and change logs, which is very useful for security purposes. This allows you to view all the changes made within IAS, any successful and failed authentications, and you can also download the change logs so you can view them within an Excel sheet. So if I go to change logs here, I can click export, and I can download this here. So I can just put this as changed logs. That'll be downloaded. I can click into that. I'll share my screen here. And then we can see a whole Excel file with all the changes that has been made to this IAS system forever since this has been provisioned. So here we can see the administrator ID, the action's been taken, and the resource name. So we can see here there's been a bunch of changes to SAP Analytics Cloud, and then some SuccessFactors as well. And here any sort of configurations that have been done. Yeah, values, attributes, actions, and then here we have the identities of the administrator and the resources. Thirdly, that brings me to the troubleshooting logs part of the reporting section. So this is where you can filter and view troubleshooting logs within the admin console. Rather than downloading a file like I've just done, you can view it all in one place. So if I click go here, that will show anything that's happened within the system. So if there's been a failed job or any failed sort of recurring processes, I can see that one in here. This is really important for in the situation that you may be audited for your security. This is really useful for organizations, especially if you work in industries like finance with the FCA or any GDPR laws, or if you're in a critical infrastructure sector. having troubleshooting or audit logs is very useful to have to show to auditors. So if you click into here, these are all successful, so it's not that useful to show, but here we have the time, the IP address, the correlation ID, and the message, which allows you to troubleshoot further. So that covers all 5 sections of the IAS admin console. We've covered how users are loaded into the system and what they look like, and the groups that you can add them into, administrators you can add. We've covered source systems, how you can configure them, put their name and ID into there, transform the data and map them to target system fields. We've shown you the target system and how recent jobs can allow you to capture any changes within the source system. Application settings, where you can show your password policies, email templates, SSO and password authentication policies. Your identity providers, where you can configure Azure AD, Office 365, and have IAS act as a proxy by sending the authentication request there. And the monitoring and reporting section, in which you can view any changes or any problems that have arisen. So does anyone have any questions after the demo? No? Okay. So that brings us to the next section, which I'll hand over to my colleague Pankaj, and he's going to take you through our experiences with IAS and what we've seen customers use in the different applications that they can be used within. So Pankaj, take it away, please.
Yeah, thanks, Suleiman. And anyone on the call, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you may have. Question may be related to IAS, or maybe just a query that you have. We are open to answering those questions here. Anyways, this is just a quick summary of and some of the things that we have done with IAS. So on an average, we typically do about 1 or 2 or 3 projects in a month for IASs because it has been gaining traction in especially last 2 years because of report stories being mandated. So a lot of work there has been done. We have implemented it across multiple geographies, mostly speaking UK, Ireland, UAE, Saudi, Spain, etc. Right now, one of the cool things that we did, which was a very unique requirement for one of the companies, which were into nuclear sector, and they wanted a custom framework because they use a system called predictive monitoring, which basically is a AI system which flags any potential security risks that may come up within their landscape, and they wanted to connect IAS to that. So this is just to let you know that IAS has such facilities where any and all of the IAS logs can be provided to an external service, and then you can use them as you wish. Of course, that requires some basic setup, some basic authentication protocol needs to be in place. But yeah, something that we're very proud of. We achieved that with this particular customer. And also, having said that, we have implemented IAS, IPS, and various other products that are related to IAS in various sectors like defense, nuclear, airlines, pharmaceutical, telecommunications sector, and also finance sector. Yep, back to you, Suleiman.
Perfect. And I think that brings us to our Q&A section. So I guess that brings us to the end of our webinar. Thank you for attending, and you can always find us at info@teleteam.com if you have any questions or any inquiries into implementations that we can do or any different functionality that the system has.